Live from Pacific Junction Hotel, Girth Radio.
Hello, Charles.
Hello. How are
I'm speaking to you on World Book Day today. We're talking about The Little Prince, and it's World Book Day.
Oh my God! I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so
World
it's like
Book Day is huge.
Good timing. Yeah,
Yeah, perfect timing.
Yeah, it looks like I set it up on purpose, but it was the way it did. So, can you introduce yourself? You do a couple of different things on your business card. So,
Yes.
introduce yourself and what your Little Prince documentary is about.
Yes, my name is Charles Officer. I'm a Toronto-based filmmaker, writer, producer. I worked, from fiction films to documentary to, episodic television. I like to explore the different facets of storytelling cinematically. Mm-hmm. Currently, we have a feature documentary, Invisible Essence, The Little Prince, that's starting its Canadian theatrical release tomorrow, March 8th at Bloor Hot Dock Cinema. And then we're going across select cities in the country. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited on World Book Day to be, talking about one of the most translated book on the planet.
Mm-hmm. There's always a period of time when somebody says, like, and I've seen you in older interviews too, you kind of mentioned that people ask you your next project and you're like, I'm working on a Little Prince documentary. So when you tell people you're working on a Little Prince documentary in that period of time before the actual comes out, what kind of reactions do people have when you drop? Because that's something you just can't casually drop.
Exactly. I've been very careful with keeping it, like, there's some people that it's I don't want to say too much, but and then also because you're such in that process, and I think my the challenge or the conflict or the fear around even accepting and going into this place was like the constant thinking of like, what am I making, and how are you making a documentary about a book? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not doing an adaptation where there's going to be actors and things, and there's been so much material also has been done, and I'm not making a biography, and I'm like, want to focus on this book, and it was, I cut it in a minimum because I didn't want to unravel this sort of layers that I was going to be exploring. Now that it's done, I feel much better like going deeper into it. But at the time, it was I'd be like, and the reactions were always like, really, The Little Prince? Like, how the heck what's that? Mm-hmm. And then that became more of the conversation of how did this even happen? How does a guy from Canada and like being part of a black guy from Toronto going to making a documentary film about this book that's written by this French author, and like, so
from the late 40s or early 40s too. Like,
absolutely. It's like 75 years, since it was published, coming to 76 years. And it's like, and the fact that, this book and is the exploration or this idea of what makes something timeless or classic. And I think as a creator, I think that's kind of what most of us strive for, is making something that's going to stand the test of time. And here's this amazing example. So it was a big fear, but also like a great inspiration for as a challenge. Like, how do I actually approach this?
So you touched upon a couple of things, but I wanted to know a little bit more in terms of like why Little Prince and not like Dr. Seuss or A Wrinkle in Time or like any, like we've had Chronicles of Narnia. There's a lot of children's books over the years that have had a huge impact. But why Little Prince then? Like you said, like, I'm this black guy from Canada. Why Little Prince?
Great question. I think for myself and my connection to it was the first time I read it. It was when I was at OCAD at art school, and I had not even, making film was not even close to my radar, but I loved illustration. I loved childlike images. I love sci-fi. I love magic realism. And here's this book that I didn't completely understand when I first read it. There were parts that totally resonated with me, but now as I've, it kind of has grown on me as I've gotten older.
It's deceptive. Like when I say children's book, it's kind of deceptive.
It's disguised as a children's book because I feel it's almost like a Pan's Labyrinth, like it has that quality where there are some very adult themes and ideas in there, but it's like disguised in this sort of way that was presented. And some of the books you've mentioned from Narnia, I mean, that was one of my most favorite books, and that was part of the inspiration, Nurse Fighter Boy of the wardrobe. I used to do that as a kid because of that book, and I used to hang out in the wardrobe, my mom's wardrobe, and I always imagined there was a back sort of, some sort of like portal to somewhere else. I never found it, but
that's disappointing. Your mom's got a terrible wardrobe.
I know, right? She didn't have the real one.
Yeah, that sucked.
But the thing that I think set Le Petit Prince apart for me than those other books again was it's tight. It's this novella, and again, like, not that those other books don't touch on magical realism, but again, it's like it's going to this sort of space of transcendence, like actually the character and these sort of non-judgmental experiences that this character goes through, and as you're looking at it deeper, it's like, you know, the aviator is never on, like, shown, like so it's that perspective. It's that I felt like, oh my God, like, this is a singular sort of piece where the person reading it can really put their perspective into this and have this relationship with this character, rather than reading about a character having all these relationships with other things. I mean, it happens, but I thought there was something special about that. And
sometimes the personal can become universal. I think
it does, and I think we hear that sometimes. I've been trying to stress this as well. Like, being more specific is more universal. But the thing that set it apart for me was that there are things I've heard about these authors, from Travers to, like, all these other people, whatever, that these famous authors, I didn't know much about Saint-Exupéry. And so my fascination was, okay, what was this creator, this artist's experiences, and how did that feed into this piece of art? And then that's when I started to, like, oh my goodness, this is why I feel like this book, the real deciding click for me was he wrote in a time of war. And looking at our time, and when I first started the project, and the changeover from Obama was coming to the end of his term, you know, Stephen Harper is coming to the end of his term. So there's this kind of crossover turning where we're getting Justin Trudeau, and we had no idea. And I was warning people from when, you know, Trump, like, if we don't take this seriously, shit's going to happen. Anyway, I felt like, what better time to explore this book, because of its messages, you know, than now. Yeah.
So I noticed that there's a lot of parallels between you as a documentary filmmaker and what The Little Prince does in the story. You go around and you observe culture, right? Because, like, for this documentary, you talk to a ballet dancer, a poet, director, a writer, and, like, lots of different creative people.
Yes.
So did interacting with all these different cultural creators, did it impact your creativity or shape your creativity in any way?
Absolutely. I think it was amazing, from Mark Osborne to Guillaume Coté, Rupi Kaur, you know, amazing biographers, Ellen Vercondelet, Stacy Schiff, Adam Gopnik. Like, there's some amazing thinkers and people who putting things out in the world with a lot of feeling.
Yeah.
You know, they feel things, they see, they observe. And I felt like, you know, this, with our minuscule budget, it was very critical for us to get around the world, specific places actually where actually Saint-Exupéry touched as well. Like, you know, France, New York, Morocco, like the Saharan desert. Like, there were very Long Island, like there's specific places, Quebec, you know, each individual had such a profound effect, and I feel like that was the honor of spending time with each and every one of them. That the whole idea, even around, you know, Sahil, this young boy, and this Braille version of Le Petit Prince that he's feeling through because he's blind, is that it wasn't until I was in New York, I had this idea, and I'm talking to Mark Osborne. I'm like, because I'd be asking everybody about vision and sight, and how would we be in this world if we couldn't see? Would it be less sexism? Would there be less racism, less violence? How do we operate if these things that we rely upon so much, our eyes, if we didn't have them? Like, we'd be relying on different things.
Right.
Would we be calling, you know, people certain names? How do we be operating? And I told him that I found this 7-year-old blind boy that's going to be my contemporary Little Prince. And he, like, stopped us. He stopped me in the middle of the conversation while we're rolling camera. He goes, "I'll be right back." And he goes to his basement. He comes back with this box and unfolds and shows us this limited edition of this Braille version that Claude Guérin, this incredible artist who is blind from France, has created. And he said, "You have to give this to this little boy." And up until that point, I was like, okay, I only wanted him to be, you know, reading Braille, some, like, version of it.
Yeah.
So that was a massive influence. It became a part of the film. Like, we see that book and that tactile thing, and it was out of that conversation. I think getting a sense of it's not in the film too much, but we talked a lot about those artists' process and how it relates to and their inspiration from Saint-Exupéry's work. Rupi Kaur, this incredible poet and illustrator, and how succinct she can be with, like, you know, a line and the emotion that she gives off, and
very sensual too.
Very sensual, and I feel like, okay, this is my connection. You know, I was lucky that I reach out to people that inspire me, you know, who I really respect, and so they all, you know, having one film where I can connect them all to this one piece was like, it was kind of magical.
You mentioned Sahil, the blind boy. You actually have a number of children in the documentary who have learning disabilities.
Yes.
Sahil is obviously blind, as you mentioned, right? Why did you choose to document their reactions to The Little Prince?
I thought it was very important because you know, there are certain books and things in certain curriculums around the world, and I felt like, yeah, this book is in my opinion should be, and I really wanted to get a sense of youth and young folks from, you know, the Bronx to Moroccan students in Tarfaya, like young like, you know, to this young boy, to Sahil, because there is a message about childhood and grown-ups, and I wanted to show that sort of perspective of this is, we all come through this rite of passage, whether we're able-bodied, disabled, whatever it is, we've all got to cross a threshold to some degree, and it was important for me to actually give that representation, and culturally as well. Like, you know, black kids reading The Little Prince. Like, you know, I think culturally, for myself, it wasn't so close to me. It was someone else that kind of mentioned to me outside about The Little Prince in my early 20s. You know, it wasn't like in our cultural sort of, you know, canon. So I want to expose that to others, that I also felt like the school also in the Bronx where all these children have learning disabilities. Majority of them, it's visual, but some are hearing. Some, like, there's all kinds of things. But can they feel this story? Because I feel like this Le Petit Prince is wrapped around feeling, which is, I think, what I love for the youth and young folks to actually learn more about and be able to identify how they're feeling. Start to build that relationship and conversation around their feelings early on. And what a better way to go through that than this book.
Well, and it feeds into the opening scene, which is, and you just mentioned this too, with the question of, like, this idea of being visual and the narrative that we feed in with our eyes. And a lot of kids, like, just seeing, like, the brown kid at the beginning, Sahil, like, you don't see a lot of blind kids, period.
No,
right?
You don't.
And then to see a brown kid, like, I think he's Pakistani.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
So you don't see that at all. Like,
No.
the disabled, like, we've kind of also, it's kind of a commentary on our society where, like,
Yes.
I don't know where handicapped people hang out or go. Or,
right?
I'm assuming there's a club somewhere.
Right? And that's why I love that first scene. It's like he's talking about the Braille Club.
The Cool Kids Club,
the
I
Cool
think
Kids Club, he wants to call it, right?
I was like, oh, can I join? That sounded actually kind of fun.
It'll be very cool. But it is, I mean, there's a whole culture there that, again, in our able-bodied kind of quote-unquote society, that there's all kinds of people out here that are have thoughts and dreams and need to function in the world. And it's almost like, yeah, like, where are they? We don't we talk about representation right now so much, and there's mandates and things coming out with gender parity and diversity and stuff, and we're leaving out a whole body of our human existence that are judged, that are treated differently, that have, like, you know, multiple struggles compared to what you and I have.
Yeah.
And so I very much want to look at that sort of layer of our humanity, of, like, who we exclude, because this child is visually impaired. There's these ideas of, like, more focus on their disability rather than their abilities. Like, they're so able and they have so much to offer, but we, because we're able-bodied and whatever, like, focus on, like the disablement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just one thing. Like, is a physical disablement, like, comparable to, you know, someone who's, like, a complete jerk and has no soul, like that's a disabled man.
Yeah.
You know, someone who's like treats humans like in a certain way. When you're seeing this kid who also navigates the world by feeling and is open and is like curious and more exciting to actually be around than quote unquote able-bodied.
Yeah, I think part of it too, it actually feeds into the themes of The Little Prince, because a lot of times when you hang out with somebody who's blind or deaf or whatever, it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable because they don't know how to, like, you know what I mean? It's the dumb thing people do when somebody's blind and they start raising their voice.
Right. They start raising their voice. Exactly.
And I'm like, you're an idiot. They're blind. They're blind. Like, they can hear.
They can hear.
Right?
Like it's this thing, or exactly what we assume is a way that, you know, and it's amazing. And again, it is trying to find comfort with humanity, like, and I think that's what divides us. It's like, you know, a religion or a man-made idea of what that is, and if we get past that and that core of it, it's still come down to the human existence and the human experience and what, you know, this thing that beats inside of our chests, and but we get so uncomfortable, you know, because there hasn't been inclusion.
Yeah.
We've been, okay, this person is like this, they're in a wheelchair or this. It means that they can't do these certain things. It's like, no, man, it doesn't take away their soul. It doesn't take away their brain. It's like they're active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's blind, completely blind. He's got the stick and the whole jazz.
Yes.
And he recently went to Chicago. And when he came back, I ran into him and I said, yo, how was Chicago? And I'm like, did you get to do any sightseeing? And I kind of winced because it's like,
yes, right.
I don't know what's the other word for sightseeing. I couldn't think of it for a second. And he laughed at me because he couldn't hear my little uncomfortableness.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, Chicago is really nice. They have really smooth sidewalks.
And that's exactly what I almost talked about. There were situations where I was, I love the sunset, and when I would be asking young Sahil while we're sitting out there how it made, I had a whole thing of how it made him feel, but I just felt like, beautiful stuff, but you have to make choices in the film.
Yeah.
But he was talking about the feeling, the sunlight on his skin, and these sort of things, and like as a child, like talking about these things and what he hears and his senses, it's like it's a cute. It's a whole different thing. Again, we're not taught. We're walking on the sidewalk. We take that for granted.
Right.
We're just walking. Or we're driving a car with too many holes in the road, and it's a argument of like
taxes
and things. But they're feeling through everything, and it's amazing. And I've always been fascinated as most creative folks that I hang around with. I mean, filmmakers, whatever. They rely on their eyes. Without it, they don't exist in a way, and that's why it was also important that there's this artist, Claude, who is blind, who doesn't even like to call himself blind artist.
Yeah.
Not a blind, I'm an artist. And his artwork is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know, I've always been fascinated with the sighted and the and non-sighted and visual impairment, and I mean, I work in a visual medium, and so giving them space and representation was absolutely key for me.
So you just touch upon creative folks. I didn't know anything about the writer for The Little Prince, right? Like, I just always kind of read the book, and then it never occurred to me that, like, somebody wrote. I guess it just showed up one day in our culture.
That's how I felt.
So can you kind of give us? I know it's a massive story, but can you just give a little snapshot of the type of life that seems to be kind of like lived, and who he was a little bit? I know that's a big question.
No, it isn't. It is a big question, but I'll give a sort of Cole's notes of it. I mean, he was born in France, and he was this incredible individual where he, was the height of aviation in the late 30s into the 40s, but he was this author, a writer. So there's something very unique about a human being who can operate technically and also be creative and express the world and see things in a way. And it was, I didn't know much about the writer as well. Like it's amazing how the book is on the tip of everyone's tongues and heard about so much, and I never thought to much about the author, which is crazy. And I see, and in the whole time I'm working, I'm like looking at the images. I'm like, this is the guy that wrote this. This is the image of an artist back then.
Yeah.
Like, this is like, it's not even in my. I'm like, this is a.
He was like flying planes and
flying
stuff.
planes. He's very tall. He's kind of like, he's not like this Parisian sort of guy who's like with the the hat and
Yeah.
sort of thing, this idea that you have. But
Because even when you look at somebody like Stephen King now,
Right.
like he's a popular writer, he's just like a dude in Maine, and I'm like, he's
Right.
kind of boring. It's
He's
not
boring.
like
It's just like
you don't want to hang out with him.
No.
But this dude was like flying planes in the
Flying
war and
planes
like
in
doing
the-
all kinds of ruckus. And I'm like,
brave, like and out there and
Mm-hmm.
involved and participating. And that's why I love the word when he's participating
Mm-hmm.
in the world. Like he's by his writing, by his aviation, by reconnaissance missions that he's flying, and refusing to like just sit back and like get involved. And his relationship with Consuelo, his wife, and how that fed into the story of the Rose. There were all these connections that I was making. Him crashing numerous times
Mm-hmm.
in near-death experiences in the desert. And this amount of time that he spent as sort of this representation of French colonialists in a way. He spent so much time in Morocco and Arabs and Muslims and was like really like integrating, like kind of, and learning and
Yeah.
putting himself there, which is what I think people don't do.
Mm-hmm.
They have these opinions about places that they've never even freaking been before.
Yeah.
And boy, do they have opinions about
Yes.
it, right? And it's like, okay, well, have you ever spoken to someone? Have you ever have you crossed that threshold? And I found those connections and very fascinating. He experienced death at a young age, so he lost his father and his brother he was very close to. And I think that as well, like some children, some of us have these experiences at a young age that force us to deal with some things that are quote unquote grown up things or whatever early on. And again, I think he felt so much and was sensitive to the world and what was happening, and I feel like those are the kind of artists that I feel like they found in a time of depression, in a time of like what's going on in the world, and they found some way to document that time that is kind of timeless and a reminder, but still find some sort of hope in it, and so. And the magic of like aviation at the time and being above the world and looking down and the perspective you get, I think it changes the way you feel about the planet. And not many of us have that experience. We're all amazed when we're on a plane. You see so many friends like posting like, from out the window of like, like we get these sort of this view and we get to maybe connect with how small we are in this grand scheme of things. And what's important, like this environment, like this, like we have climate change deniers right now. Are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? Like, so what are we seeing?
Yeah.
And then what are we calling? And he would see things and he's saying it. And I think that we can do that a lot more.
Picking up on that thread then, the book was published after he died, shortly after he
Yes,
died.
yes.
So from the people you talked to, and you talked to some of his family members and things like that, other historians and people like that, was there any sense of like how he would have like, because the fact that this book came out and it's been such a monster influence for 75 years,
Yeah.
would he have expected this? Would he have been proud? Would he have been shy? Would he have been embarrassed? How do you get the sense of...
The sense that I got is that that he never would have expected it to be this popular. When it first came out, it wasn't very popular. People didn't know how to take it, and it was confusing, and there was a sort of like this sort of magic around it also, or this thing around, because the author had just passed too. And then so it was like, what is this piece of work, and I think that there's, because he was an acclaimed author, like he's written Wind, Sand, and Star, amazing like novels before this, and but everyone can name Le Petit Prince. Only the diehards will know all his other novels, but like he couldn't. He couldn't. He was in a place where it was like writing creativity was a challenge, to feel the whole inspiration to do that stuff. And I think that, again, is like, it's amazing when we think about artists sitting around for inspiration. We don't sit around for inspiration. And like Anthony Quinn would always say this, you got to work at it, because there are days that you don't feel inspired.
Yeah.
You're not going to sit around and wait for something to touch you.
It's not a bus stop.
Exactly. And you got to be seeking and in it. and he pushed through. The amazing these drawings and the drafts, and there was this one thing that Christine Nelson, who's a curator at the Morgan Museum Library, that gave me that I wanted to put in the film, but I didn't want to dilute the most famous line of what is essential is invisible to the eye. But she handed me a list of all the variations before he got to that line.
Oh, wow.
See, what people don't take for granted is like writers write drafts
Yeah.
to get to the final. There's an editor, like there's so much work involved, and to read some of these lines are amazing. But I was like, okay, I don't want to dilute like this one main line. It's kind of a cool thing to talk about after, but that's the kind of investigating he was doing on just a line. 25 versions of one line.
Yeah.
You know?
But it signifies that he knew that he was onto something, though.
Absolutely.
Like, you don't work that hard. Like, if you're just cranking something out or the money or whatever, you don't do 25.
No, you don't.
You do 1 or 2, and
Two
it's like
passes
you
and
check
you're
the spelling, and then
you send it off and you let it go. He was seeking something. He was digging for something. He was trying to find the right thing, and I think I'm glad he did that work.
A lot of the lessons from the people in your doc, they feel like really timely. So how do you think that ideas expressed in story appear to have more power rather than what we kind of tend to do now, which is like hashtags and editorials and like very blunt, like, you know, I mean, you talked about climate deniers, these kind of things. Like, those are kind of like how those ideas are getting spread now. But this is a powerful story and an allegory, and so people could take things out of it.
Yes.
How do you find that's more powerful necessarily than, like I said, like hashtags or editorials?
Great question, because it's also how I feel it connects to like how Saint-Exupéry disguises these issues and these stories like through this sort of childlike presentation. I think allegories and thematic ideas and reflective sort of scenarios and shaping a narrative that can speak to that, I think it also allows a space for that individual to not feel like threatened or put in this sort of place. Like even the Little Prince, like he doesn't judge these characters that he goes and meets, although they're like, what are you talking about? You rule, like you're the only person on your planet, king. Like what is this sort of thing? You're like, you know, you own the stars. Like you wanna like own that, like something that belongs to all of us, you know, and so those sort of like, you know, the little clip in the film where I found from the 1974 film where the king is talking about borders, and I'm revisiting this stuff through the archive, and I'm like, that's a massive conversation right now. Like that borders have to exist because I need to be this, you know. Borders have to exist for a certain reason, but for the right reasons, you know. And it's such a conversation right now that I feel like these sort of allegories are these sort of reminders about these pitfalls that we fall into as human beings never go away, and we're all going to face them. So I think it's less than the buzz and the hashtag of like telling people like what's up. That the beautiful thing about art and creation and its films and novels and paintings and music is that it can communicate things to us that can penetrate a little further than feeling like attacked or threatened. And we love stories. I don't care, like, you know, if you're a white supremacist and whatever, like I do care. Yeah. But I'm saying like there's a narrative that everybody can kind of learn something through. And I think that is more the key to actually finding commonality. Is like, let me tell you this story about this, rather than tell you that you acting this way is like oppressive or whatever. Let me tell you a story.
We've seen that with like when people hashtag like Black Lives Matter, and then there's always somebody who does White Lives Matter, and then it goes back and forth. And I'm like, white people are obviously in poverty and they're dying as well too, right? So it's not like it's just you know what I mean? But I understand the black situation is different, and so you need to bring attention. But what you're talking about is like, let's ignore that stuff and let's focus on the story, and then that can inspire.
Because the stories humanize us, right? Like if there's a human in the center of it, an experience. I'm not saying that people don't deny you know, someone comes out and expresses their lived experience, and people are like, you liar. Who the hell are you? You're a racist. Instead, it's like, no, I just actually was talking about what I experienced. And why does my life experience offend you so much? Why do you take such, like, you know, resistance to what I'm telling you? Why are you affected that way? Because there are things that you haven't reconciled with, in your own ideology of what this issue is. And if you take a moment to listen, if we can listen to each other's stories and our experiences, listen to them. Listen to them, take them in, instead of wanting to cut off and create a different ending or a different outcome because you don't want to hear it. It's I think story is what connect us. Yeah.
It's very much like the Aviator when he was fixing the plane and he was annoyed with the Little Prince.
Absolutely.
Right? He's like, look, I'm dealing with a real issue here. I don't you know what I mean? Like black people are doing this, or like gay people need this help, or like whatever it is.
Yes.
I'm dealing with a real issue here. I don't have time for you.
Yes.
Right? And the Little Prince is like just talking about sheep and like little
right.
It seems very like you don't understand the gravity of the situation.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But it was the Aviator wasn't listening.
He wasn't listening. And then once it's like there's something to be learned when we take a moment. Not that everyone has all these profound things to say, but I think I use this sort of example of there's a kid at the corner of Yonge and Dundas on the corner in front of the Eaton Center, and he's spewing out all kinds of philosophical or ideas and things, and people be like, oh, that kid's so cute, oh my gosh, you're really smart, whatever, this, that, or it's like, oh my gosh. And then you put that it's a grown person with a little shabbier clothes saying the same things, and they're like, that person should be institutionalized, you know? I'm not saying that we don't, there's a mental, but you get what my point is that our ability to listen and who the message is coming from is there's so much judgment placed on that doesn't allow folks to absorb properly. And I think that in our current time, current times are current times, but not that these issues haven't been going on, but I live in this time now, and I do want to see that acknowledged, where the space and this idea of actually taking in experiences to a certain way and listening. David's got to listen to the experience of this little kid who's like, pulling on his leg and saying, hey, like, actually maybe things are going to be okay. Like, what about this thing, and the wise child, the wisdom.
You mentioned the current times. I want to close. I'll get you out on this question. This is a bit of an unfair question, so I apologize, but you're doing really well. So
I love the setup.
But like in the last year or two, last couple of years, we've had a real celebration of Mr. Rogers. There was the bio. There was a really problem in the documentary.
There's a fiction film that's being made right now.
Yeah, with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Brian J. Jones has a Dr. Zeus biography coming out in May of this year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And Little Prince, as you said, is turning 75, 76 years old now. What is it? Is this a current trend in our society reflected on the current times where like we're trying to retreat back to childhood, back to curiosity, back to simpler times? Or is this all just a coincidence and these things just, that's the way it kind of goes?
I think I'm not sure if it's great. I think there's an energy between artists where I was just saying that, for every one idea, there's like probably like, at least 20 people minimum around the world that's thinking of a similar idea. I think Dr. Seuss and Mr. Rogers and this idea of this humanity and these sort of ideas and these messages that have been here that we've kind of put aside or like forgotten, and that hasn't been that they've been here, that I think creators are feeling it's important to revisit and put these things out in the world because we need them. Like, when I'm hearing about Mr. Rogers and sort of this idea that I was just listening to the Vanity Fair Directors Roundtable where the filmmakers, she's talking about the more that she's delved into this human being of like what kind of human being this person was, and that, my goodness, like that person needs to be celebrated now because people we need to know that these kind of individuals existed, and that it's okay if we want to be that, And
Mother Teresa, same thing,
right? Like it's there's these iconic individuals. I think we can go there if we can celebrate Elvis Presley or Freddie Mercury or these amazing individuals. There's a whole plethora of them out there that I think represent something. They represent a stance and an individuality and a philosophy that they stuck by that actually was identifying where their souls are at. Just stand up for yourself because you're transgendered or you are Muslim who's like wants to tell these stories, or you want to delve into this. It's like, there's a lot of courage in those individuals. There's a lot of courage in those writers, and I think that the evolution of art forms from cinema to music, it's like there are times in classics where they don't make great songs the way that they don't make like there's something about those times that I think that are so
Motown,
relevant.
for example.
Motown, right? It's I think it's important for us to revisit these sort of things. And I wouldn't say it's a trend. I think it's because the times are calling for these stories.
So your story in the documentary form is Invisible Essence. Is going to be playing at the Hot Docs for March.
March 8th to the 14th. And we're just we're launching this is the beginning of our cross-Canada theatrical release. We'll be playing in cities across the country.
Okay. Where can people find it online or find more information on the screenings or anything like that?
I think right now at the Blue Hot Docs website, there's all the information about our Toronto release date. There'll be information coming out from our distributor Blue Ice, where on their website where you can get our full sense of the Canadian run. And so we're coming to a city near you. So I hope that people, essentially I would love that people, if they're feeling right now that they can use a perspective about our hearts and our souls and how we're functioning on this planet, come and see this film. And because I think it's important that this film will lead you back to reading the book and sharing the actual piece of literature. It's literature is so critical, and in our connection as human beings, and I think it's that's why the film was made.
All right, we got to end it there. That's a positive note. So thank you,
Charles,
for taking some time. Thank you for the documentary.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
And I guess thank you, too, for the forces that aligned us with The Little Prince and put it into our pop culture.
Yes. Thank you so much, my friend.
My name is Sammy Younan. This has been another fantastic episode of My Summer Lair. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, My Pal Sammy.